So if you guys have any questions, put them in the live chat right now. In the meantime, we're going to go through some of the questions that we received throughout the week. And this first...
Okay, first one. Should we go for George?
Yeah, go for George.
All right. So we got a question from George Gonzalez saying, hello, I have 2 weeks to travel around New Zealand. So my question is, which one do you think is the better option, the travel pass or the FlexiPass? That's for Intercity, for the Intercity buses. Because I'm traveling alone and I don't know so much about New Zealand, so my plan is to reach Milford Sound, but I have no idea how it works and the timetables. Also, how can I find accommodation between trips?
All right, so the first thing that I would like to talk about is nzpocketguide.com. So it's our website in which we put like all our information on there, and it's entirely free for you to use. So for example, we do have an article right here. I hope you guys can see it. It says, what's the difference between the Intercity passes? And in there, we go like in super depth into all the differences and everything. So that should help you, George, be able to find a bit more information and also go at your own pace. You know, you can just read slowly rather than us talking super fast. But we're going to go over your questions right now. And first up, let's talk a little bit about the FlexiPass. What it is, Laura?
So
what is it?
What it is. So FlexiPass is one of the passes offered by Intercity, and how this works is that, well, like the name suggests, it's their most flexible pass in that you pay for a certain amount of hours that you travel on the bus, but you can use those hours anywhere on the New Zealand map. You can go anywhere around New Zealand using those hours. So say it takes 3 hours to travel between Auckland and Rotorua, then you will be using your 3 hours that you've paid for with your FlexiPass to basically do that trip. So that's the FlexiPass in a nutshell.
So you can use those hours to pay for example, for the ferry in between the northern and the southern and the southern end. So there is some flexibility right here. This is why it's called FlexiPass, but this is usually better for someone that has a little bit more time. George said that he has only a couple of weeks. So and then also somebody which would be maybe a little bit more proficient into planning their own trip. It looks like George is having a bit of an overwhelming feeling right now in trying to plan everything for himself. So at that point, the travel pass may be actually better for you. So the travel pass is from the same company. It's still from Intercity, but it does work a little bit differently.
Yeah, so the travel pass is actually doing a set route around the country. So you basically pay to do, well, they have multiple options, so multiple set routes around the country. So that means going either both the North Island and the South Island, or you could choose a travel pass that only does the North Island if that's all you have time for instance. But yeah, basically it's an itinerary set for you. You don't have to pay anything else for the bus travel. You just, hop on the bus and do what they suggest and go to where they suggest to go, which is actually probably the ideal scenario for someone that doesn't know New Zealand very well, would rather not really, do too much planning, just sort of go with the flow, see where they end up. And that's probably a reason to choose the travel pass.
And also the good thing with the travel pass is that there are a couple of very small activities included with that, like the Milford Sound cruise, for example, which is one of your goals in going, in coming to New Zealand. So that may be a really good option for you. Now, with that in mind, Intercity is still kind of the most DIY, do-it-yourself kind of travel around New Zealand, right? So you will have to sort out your own itinerary. You will have to sort out your own accommodation. You will have to seek out and book your own activity. So you can have a lot of the bulk work to do for yourself. And if you travel around New Zealand for only 2 weeks, you may want to look into other options. There are some companies like Wild Kiwi or Flying Kiwis, which are two bus companies which offer tours, which everything is organized for you. You got the accommodation, you got the activities, you got the whole itinerary. Everything is done for you. And honestly, when you add up everything between the pass, the accommodation, the activities, the prices very much are about the same. They are a little bit more expensive, but we're talking $100 or $200 extra. That is it. So it's pretty small amount of money. for an entire week, or an entire 2 weeks trip in New Zealand. So looking at the fact that you are a little bit stressed about booking all the accommodations and everything, I will strongly look into that. So same thing, if you go on NZ Pocket Guide and then you go on prepare your trip, and then transportation and then bus, we have a ton of information right here to help you out with that, and with some link to those companies in order to sort all those things out. To have everything organized for you, it is so good. There is also a company called Kiwi Experience that will do something like that as well. So definitely have a look at those options as well. But if you're traveling with Travel Pass or FlexiPass and you are looking to arrive in town and book your own accommodation, there is multiple options to do that. Either you decide to plan ahead and you know where you're going to be and when, and at that point you can go online. You can go on our website, same thing, nzpocketguide.com, and look at all our recommendations of hostels and book your favorite hostel in every places. We strongly recommend to do that, so like that you have peace of mind and you've done all that planning step before you arrive in New Zealand. You know what you're going to be doing with your pass, you know where you're going to be going, you know your date. If you're only here for 2 weeks, you must know where you're going to, with everything, right? So you will have all that done. So I will actually go online and book all those hotels yourself. But you can also just be dropped off by the Intercity and book it yourself by just walking in.
Yeah, so a lot of hostels, considering, like in most places, when it's not the high season or the busy season, so the high season in New Zealand is in summer, which goes between December and February. So outside of those months, pretty much any accommodation that you arrive in New Zealand, you'll be able to go to reception and just, go ahead and ask for a room for the night. It's that easy.
Yeah.
New Zealand, pretty much everywhere is pretty quiet for most of the year. But like I say, in the tourist hotspots, especially like Queenstown or Lake Tekapo, if you're even staying in Milford Sound, for instance, there's very limited accommodation down there. So in these sort of, big tourist hotspots, and especially in summer, it will be harder to do this approach where you just walk into accommodation and say, I need a room for the night. So depending on what season you're traveling, that is also an option for booking your accommodation.
So you've got a couple of options, as you can see. You can either just, go with the flow and just book as you go. But at that point, that gives you a little bit of extra stress, as well as you usually have a little bit less choice. As Laura mentioned, if you travel in a high season, it is likely that you're always going to get a spot. There is going to be a bed left, but it may be in the room, which is a big dorm that shares with 8 different people, or it may be just a private room because all the other options, are overtaken.
Yeah.
So planning a little bit ahead is usually a little bit smarter. However, the one thing I really want to stress is that if you're planning to travel in New Zealand for only 2 weeks, I can't stress enough that you need to plan everything, right? You need to know where you're going and what you're going to plan to do and where you're going to be staying. You're going to have so little time and so much to do that if you spend half your trip trying to plan the next leg of your trip, you're not going to enjoy your trip in New Zealand as much. And that's why I was suggesting to maybe look at a bit more organized kind of tours of New Zealand, like Wild Kiwi, Kiwi Experience, or Flying Kiwi. There's a theme right here. The word Kiwi.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think there may be a little bit of an easier option for you to travel. And also the good thing with those kind of bus tours is that you straight away have a bunch of friends that you're going to be traveling with. So you don't have that feeling of always be alone doing all those activities. I love the social part of traveling with the bus around New Zealand. Plus, if you do have some special requirement, like let's say you just want to stay in private room, or you just want to stay in cheapest option and everything for accommodation, usually you have option to kind of customize kind of what kind of accommodation you want to get, and it is all sorted for you. And on top of that, most of the time there is also meal taken in consideration. It's not always included. Like company like Wild Kiwi, they includes a few dinners and everything like that, along the way. But usually you have a stop where there is a place where you can eat, which is affordable. When you travel around with Intercity, that's not necessarily the case. You have to sort all of that for yourself as well. So you have to plan your meal. You have to plan, I'm going to be in the bus around lunchtime, so I'm going to need to pack myself a sandwich. So I need to go to a supermarket or somewhere to get myself a sandwich and have something to eat in a bus. No, I mean, you have a lot to plan for yourself.
Yeah.
And I feel it's just the way the question was phrased. I felt like, a bit more organization and a bit more of an all-inclusive tour was a good option.
And also the fact that you state that you are traveling alone. I don't know if you are looking for a more social experience, so you don't feel like you're traveling alone in New Zealand, but the other bus options, like Robin suggested, like Wild Kiwi and Flying Kiwi, are usually full of other people doing exactly the same thing as you, traveling alone around New Zealand. So you kind of, the people you're traveling with are more open-minded to, speak to you, to socialize with you and that sort of thing. That's just what happens on those buses. Whereas on the intercity buses, also bear in mind that intercity is more of a sort of kind of like a national transport, where it's kind of like the vibe of public transport, where you are with people just sort of like, locals commuting like between cities to get to visit family and stuff. So, with that sort of vibe, people aren't really super social on those buses. You might be lucky to sit next to someone who's also traveling New Zealand and might be more open to, sort of traveling with you or being more social. But a lot of the time, it's kind of like people just sort of keep to themselves on the intercity buses. Yes. So that would be a very different vibe to taking one of the other bus tour options around New Zealand.
All right, so I hope that this answered your question, George. If you do have any follow-up questions, or if your name is not George and you have a question for us as well, feel free to pop your question in the comments of any of our videos. We pick them up, we answer them during our live session. It's a weekly thing, and we love doing that for you guys. If you feel like saying thank you for all our hard work, you can hit the like button. It's a free way for you guys to say thank you for all our hard work. And you can also hit subscribe if you are planning a trip to New Zealand and you want some updates, some help, some tips and all that. We publish new videos every single week, actually more than probably about 3, 4, 5 times a week at the moment. So yeah, hit subscribe, all that good thing. And thanks for watching.